Monika Balint is a sociologist, PhD student and a cultural worker. She has been taking part in public art and socially engaged art projects since 2001. In between 2001 and 2006, she's been working as a member of the artist collective HINTS, now working independently as a project coordinator at Hungarian Young Greens and with Impact's contemporary art provider. Her field of research is participatory art and community development. As a local activist, she's been involved in different projects in Józsefváros, the A district of Budapest, the Magdi Festival, a 3-day Romani-Hungarian festival realized in May 2009 in coordination with the Roma Parliament, among others, was organized to celebrate Zsófi's moving in and the creation of the local paper Magdi. Okay. The Magdolna Quarter community projects in 2008-2009 were one of the first trials to implement renewal of the multiple retarded urban district with the involvement of the residents. Monika Balint was an organizer and the curator of the project Normal is Different, realized in cooperation between Kimi Budapest and Theater Anders Harkai, Berlin. And she's also arranged a film picnic at the Urban Potential Festival. I told you.
It was a quite long introduction, thank you. Although I've been working in the district for a long time and I live here, this is my, let's say, hometown, the district. I will not talk about my activist projects or even the artistic projects I was organizing. Connecting to what Balázs was talking about, I would like to tell you some things about the social structure of this district, and especially about the social structure of the neighborhood where most of these guys live who are doing rap, and also which is closer to the Roma Parliament where we are based. It's the A district where we are sitting now is traditionally lower middle class, or quite recently it's much more poor area, and since the political changes in 1989, there were many attempts to change the social and physical conditions of the district, but I believe it's quite slow change. Still, there are many programs which have started to make a different physical condition of the place, and in some parts it also makes social differences. Here you can see the map of the A district, and it's a map with 11 areas within the district, which were divided by the local government and by architects who made long-term regeneration plans for the A district. There is a company called Rév 8. They were settled in 1997 to make long-term action plans for physical and social renovations, regeneration of the district. I will talk about more the middle part, which is called Magdolna negyed. There are some social differences in between the areas, and the Magdolna quarter and the one which is next to it, Orci quarter. They are the most poor and most rundown areas, and Magdolna quarter is also, as you could see, physically segregated as being in the middle, and it's also socially segregated. Most of the people who live here, a big percentage of people who live here, they have been unemployed for decades. There are already generations of in different families who've been not finding work for the past decades, and the local government made a program called the Social Regeneration Program. It was for the start, it was a model program, pilot with some pilot projects to see if regeneration with the participation of the inhabitants is possible in Budapest and also in the A district. And also they've chosen this type of regeneration process because this middle part of the district is less, let's say, sexy for investors, and the main problems are not connected only to the physical state of the houses, but also the social condition of the people. And I will not tell you in details the whole process of the social regeneration. I have a lot of experience of it because as a member of a civil organization, I was organizing many events in the past 3 or 4 years, mainly community events and cultural projects which were connecting to the idea of community development. But my question was all the time if is it possible to use community development in a city, or is it possible to use community development like the word in connection to an area where 12,000 people live, who are very different, and many of them don't even know each other. So I believed all the time that using the word community in this context is much more an ideal and some kind of a goal that people want to make, and because community has to be a little bit more than a group of people living at the same physical place. So I made a small research. It's not. I don't think it's finished at the moment. Some of the things I found have to be analyzed more deeply, I believe. But it's a little bit in connection with some research we did with Esther George, who is going to give a lecture tomorrow. To search for traces of community or hints of community life, I've decided to use these four elements in the group, and also the other way I was looking for groups within the society of the Magdolna quarter are to check for spaces where there are some kind of conflicts, or where these social groups interact with each other. That's why I use the term contact zones, which is also tricky because in some way the whole Magdolna quarter could be seen as a contact zone. If we identify contact zones as spaces of interaction and exchange of different cultural groups, this area has always been a space for it. If those who don't live here, if you have the time to go around, you see that it's not very far from big connection points for travel, and also there are big markets around here. One market is now closed, the Teleki market. It's under renovation. They're making a new market, but for even in the past 2 centuries, there were always some markets, food markets or animal markets in the same place, and because the first railway station of the Pest side was built here, the Józsefváros station, which is also closed now. it was always a space for newcomers or travelers to arrive, especially people who were coming to Budapest to look for a job or any kind of opportunity of a living. But as a place, a mobile place, it's also a transit area. So many people who come here, they don't stay for a long time, or they don't stay for a lifetime, or they come here and believe that they will have the opportunity of moving away, but maybe they stay. But it's a part of their identity that they are not settled here. So I was looking for some groups, and these are the indicators I was using in my analysis to see if these groups are able to become communities, or can we call them communities. These are the personal relations in the everyday life, their cultural and social similarities, solidarity within the group, if they show any solidarity to each other, and the possibilities of advocating the group's needs toward other groups and organizations. And I will tell you shortly about 5 groups I was analyzing. One group is or it's actually 3 groups, but they are connected, are civil organizations who were born in the past few years in connection to the social regeneration program. So they are all new organizations with only inhabitants of the area, and they were made by neighboring houses or neighboring people. We can call them the local patriots or the active civil groups. The other group is in some way these, I call them the old masters. They are the musicians who Balázs was also telling you about in connection with OSD. So it's an older generation of musicians who traditionally played gypsy music in restaurants and in bands in the past. I will tell you later a little bit more about them. Then there's a third group who I call mobile families. They are Roma families who moved to the area in the hope for looking for work from other cities or villages. Also, there is a group of people who moved here or move here regularly from Romania. There are 2 groups within this group of people who I was trying to get information about. And then there are the 4th group, the immigrants and refugees, and there's the 5th group, which may not be called. I mean, it might be interesting why I connect them to a community, but in the A district, most of the communities have some kind of, most of the people have who are members of these groups have some kind of a tension in between each others, and homeless are those who are the black sheep, who are rejected by everyone in the district, and it's important to talk about them because this kind of rejection is involved in the policy of the local government these days. And and actually there was a video released just recently from one of the boys who was on your video just about a few weeks ago in Socinet, where he's giving a message for the mayor of Józsefváros that he shouldn't treat homeless people like this. So there is a connection. So the first group are these local civil organizations, and if we are looking for their personal relations, of course there are many personal contacts within these people, as they are living in the same houses. So many of them are living in the same or neighboring houses, and they have everyday contacts in their life. There are also some friendships and some family connections, but I'm not sure if these are long-lasting connections. Looking at the cultural or social similarities, they don't have. Their social position is somehow similar, as usually they are. If we can still use the term class, they are working or lower middle class people. Many of them are unemployed, as I told, but culturally they are very heterogeneous. So there are not many things in common in between them. I was looking if there is any solidarity shown in their activities. There is one group, this Four Houses Association, who regularly organize cultural events, social events for the members of the group, and also they help in some situations when there's crime around the houses, or when even when someone is looking for a job. And also they are giving treats or for the kids on different events. But we have to admit that this is not an organic activity, because most of the events are patronized by the local government. So there is a small budget that these organizations can use if they want to organize this kind of events. And the possibility of advocating their needs are quite visible, as there are always members of these groups who are active on local forums, and they try to have an influence on local politics and policy making. But there's a downside of this kind of activity also, that most of the people who are the most active are representing the ethics of the majority of the Hungarian society. So in many cases you can find active people who use their activity to somehow, I'm looking for a word, to somehow make boundaries for the activity of their own neighbors, to influence the local politics in a way that some of the to regulate the others, as they are quite active, some of these attempts to regulate the other groups in the neighborhood already made a change in policy making, like those in connection with the homeless people, or even there's a new regulation from the local government that if you are getting social support because they are unemployed in the family, you would have a regular check from the social, from the local government, if your household is clear enough, if you have toilets in your flat and things like this. So it's quite humiliating, and it shows the needs of the neighbors of the poor families, and not the needs of the families themselves. The next group who I visited sometimes and had interviews with the members are the group who I call the old masters. They're musicians, middle-aged or older musicians who've been very active in the Kádár area, in the socialist area, and that time this genre called gypsy music was not only popular, but also it was many musicians were hired by the state, so many musicians had the opportunity for regular work, and they had quite a stable income. And after 1989 it changed, and the state was privatizing restaurants and the organizations who were hiring musicians, and many of these musicians had to look for new job opportunities. Some could change to turn into other genres or to look for other type of work, but many of them found themselves in a very bad social situation. And there is an organization in the neighborhood called the Reménye, the Gypsy Musicians Association, which is organized by this group, and it's based in this shop. Actually, it's the old shop. This shop was moved to another space a few years ago, but it's a string instrument repair shop. Run by Farkas István, who is also the head of this organization, and they try to organize, to help organizing events and help organizing possibilities of work, and also it's a meeting point where if one goes in, can get some kind of information on where they can find some kind of work. And I think that personal relations are very strong in this group. There are, of course, friendships. People have worked with each other for years, and also some family connections. So it's a quite strong community in this sense. And of course they have a very similar background. So it's culturally the cultural connections, educational background, and work relations make a very similar lifestyle, and it's also a very strong connection through cultural background and everyday lifestyle. Solidarity within the group is visible because this institution, let's call it an institution, the shop and the association, is a place of giving help and advice to each other regularly, and also they had the opportunity to make official steps in articulating their problems towards local government. The A district in 2010 organized a gypsy music band for Józsefváros, and there are 40, or at that time there were 41 musicians hired by Józsefváros. The downside of it that they are hired on the system of public work. That means that they get really the minimum that you can get for work in Hungary, so the minimum wages, and also they have to, apart from it, this regular income, they are not provided any money when they work at official events of the local government. So the local government uses them as their own band, but they paid the minimum. The second group is those who I call the mobile families. They are families who are moving here from the countryside, and some of them move here for longer terms or settle in the neighborhood, but there are many of them who are not settled and are moving back and forth during the year for some works that they can find in the summertime in the countryside, and then coming back for the rest of the year to this area. Also, there's another group who have a similar economic situation, but with a different background. They are coming from Romania, so not from the countryside of Hungary, but from Romania. And it's quite important because the members of this group make this difference, and they really relate to this difference. I was organizing a club for kids for 2 years at the Magdolna Square, and the kids were for the kids it was a very important reference that they are not that they are Hungarian Roma and not Romanians, and sometimes even some kids didn't want to come to class if the Romanians were coming in. So there is some kind of I find it in a way quite logical that even in a neighborhood where everyone is having a different ethnic and cultural background, those who are coming last will be the most strangers. So you always have in a transit area like this newcomers, and newcomers are always the most strange for those who settled somehow. And it's a quite heterogeneous group, but with similar cultural background, and there are. Of course, it's quite a big group, so not everyone knows each other, but there are regular friendships and some family connections within the group. And as this is the most vulnerable group in the Magdolna quarter, there is some kind of solidarity within them. Most of these families, they don't even have a stable place of living, and they live at their relatives' houses, or they find cheap sublets. And there are many families, or there are some families who I met who are squatting. So they're usually even in this area, but some families are moving throughout the year to flats which they find empty. Like, for example, those flats at the Corvin area, which are meant to be destroyed in the future. And because they are not settled, and most of them don't have a legal status in Józsefváros, they cannot have any social support, so they cannot ask for legally for social support in the area. And so there are two other groups who I wanted to mention. The next group are the immigrants or refugees who live in the area. As Balázs told, there are many minorities in the A district, and there was a research made a few years ago about immigrant groups in the A district. The biggest immigrant group in the A district are those who are Hungarian speaking, so who are coming from neighboring countries, but they can quite quickly assimilate, and you don't see them. I mean, in a sociological term, they are minorities, but in the everyday life, it's not a visible group. And then, of course, there are Vietnamese and Chinese minorities, but if we are talking about the Magdolna quarter, this minority lives in other areas of the A district and not in the Magdolna quarter. There are, I mean, as far as I could see, there are two groups who are, let's say, more visible in this area, are the African and Arabic immigrants, and they are visible through their businesses and also some meeting points in the district. There is a mosque at the Magdolna quarter. I will show you on a picture at the end. So, as you could see in the film of Balázs, there are some shops which are run by Africans in Budapest, and there are some in this area also. And actually, if you are an immigrant in Hungary, it's one of the tools of surviving to make your own business in Hungary. Legally, it's quite hard to get permission for work for immigrants in Hungary, but if you make your own business, it's a much easier way to survive. And but if you visit these shops, most of them are giving service to other members of the immigrant group, and are connected to tradition and heritage they are bringing with them. And I find it important that it's not only a meeting point for the immigrants themselves, but also a meeting point for with the other groups, as you could see in the video. And quickly, I will tell you just a few words about the homeless who are also not a coherent group, but there are many conflicts in which they are referred to by the other groups, and it has to be said that although they are in the worst social status in the area and the worst social so they are in the worst social status in Hungary, but there is still some kind of possibility for them to advocate their needs. There is a new group, civil association called The City is for Everyone, Város Mindenki, which was established by some homeless people and some young activists, and in local fights, let's say, on policy making, they are very active and able to articulate the needs of the homeless. I find it important to talk about this group also, because when you are talking to the local inhabitants at different places and squares about the neighborhood and about the main problems of the neighborhood, they are often referring to this group. So although I use the term contact zones in my title, it would be much more useful to look for contact points in the neighborhood, and I try to find to show some points I find important. If we are thinking of the places where the groups I analyzed have some kind of connection and interaction with each other. These are, of course, the main squares in the area. Mátyás tér is the square just down the road, and we made some interviews with people who regularly come to the Mátyás tér, and there were two conflicts mentioned usually. Is the conflict in between the different families, the different with different tradition and background in how they use the square itself, and how they try to regulate each other's activities in the square, and also they often refer to the homeless who have a small part built for them in the Mátyás Square, where they can sit and spend their daytime. But still, even if the square was renovated during a social regeneration program with trying to find the needs of every group, there are still tensions in between these groups, and the group which is most attacked are the homeless. It's also a basis of tension in between the group at the Teleki tér. And I pointed these two yellow points are businesses or services which are run by immigrants. The one at Karácsony Sándor utca is a car repair shop, and the one at Dobozi utca is a halal food shop, and next to it there is the mosque. Just to finish this lecture, I would again try to refer to Balázs's film and lecture where you could see that this kind of international culture, which is represented in hip hop, is an element that can connect many groups, and there was one reference you didn't make, is that it doesn't only connect the African and the Roma community, but also the different groups in between the Roma community in the area, and I think it's quite important. Thank you.